More on Reddit's conflicts, spams and scams, and the Apple tax that isn't. This is MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by Notion. Do your most efficient work with Notion projects at notion.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, the second part of this MacVoices live discussion continues our examination of the conflict at Reddit between its management, its users, and the volunteers who keep things moving. Then we take a look at a scam that you may not be aware of, but you definitely should be. We wrap up with a conversation about Apple tax, what it is and why it isn't really a tax, and why you may be happy to pay it. Let's go back and let the panel do the talking. Yeah.
So I don't know what was said before, but I think they're probably between a little bit of a rock and a hard place. I think the CEO maybe have modeled himself after maybe Elon Musk and what went on at Twitter or other places. But
he admitted that.
I think that I think when this started a week or two ago, I just did a little bit of search, and it seems like Reddit has raised about $1 billion in 6 rounds of venture capital. So, they filed to go public earlier, and getting rid of freeloaders is probably a financial imperative for them. Mm-hmm. So that's probably leading to what they're doing. Whether they're doing it well or in a heavy-handed fashion, I don't think anyone would say they're doing it well. But I think we can understand what their motivation is, and just wish that they would have done it in a lot better, fashion.
Yeah.
So educate me a little bit. And Mark, you say freeloaders, but isn't it the freeloaders to some degree that are generating the content and creating the value? Sort of like the argument that you could make that argument for Twitter, that non-paying Twitter users were really helping create the content and drive Twitter.
Well, that's great. And freeloaders is, I use it because it's an emotionally exciting term, but it's an imprecise term. I think in Reddit, I think the reality is that, they have a power law distribution of users, and there's a small number of users that generate, an inordinate amount of views and API calls and the like. And those are the ones who should be paying something. Whether their pricing is appropriate or not, don't know. They have to crack open their books so somebody could do a forensic analysis. But I do think, it's analogous to Musk, where some of the Weather Service or New York MTA, was spreading out a lot of information, and they were trying to get $42,000 or $84,000 a month, whatever the number was. Maybe that's fair value. Maybe that's just something arbitrary, that was picked. But the fact of the matter is that servers cost money, and there's been all sorts of other fine companies that have gone under just because of the heavy weight of their server bills to Amazon or Google, or to Azure. So I think probably Reddit has clearly blown a lot of VC money funding servers, and you can tell that the time is nigh that they have to stop doing that.
Yeah, Reddit's has had a lot of bad business practices over the years, and the bill for that is coming due. But they're doing it in pretty much the most undiplomatic way they can, which is, quite frankly, causing a lot more problems than it is solving. If they would have just went to both the user base and the API base, look, we have to start making money for this company. We can't live on VC money forever. So we're going to have we're going to start moving towards a paid model. Here are going to be the steps for that. It probably would have went over a lot better. the current way they did it, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to jack up the price. We're going to belittle the users, and oh yeah, it's going to be done at the end of the month. Yeah, that's a pretty good way to deep six your business.
Ben, you're taking my thinking right out of my head. I just can't figure out why, especially after watching the blowback against Elon and the way he handled things. And we've debated that here endlessly, but you would have thought that somebody would have learned a lesson and said, let's soft pedal this just a little bit, and and see what kind of results we can get, maybe over a little longer period of time, and a little bit easier. And then if we have to go to a more nuclear option, not a nuclear option, but a more nuclear option, yeah, that's still on the table. But to take it this way, it just seems like they're alienating the people that are building the interfaces people prefer, and they're now alienating users. And now we have a hacker group who's threatening to release data, which again I would assume is user data, which seems kind of counterproductive given that they want to keep Reddit around. So but we don't know that for sure as to what that 80 gigs is.
Yeah, and they don't have anywhere near as much control over their own platform as Musk does with Twitter.
Elaborate on that, please.
Yeah.
Well, they have all these volunteer moderators, I guess.
Yeah. Essentially, they have unpaid labor doing most of everything for them. I mean, they don't have, quite frankly, it would cost a considerable amount of money to replace those moderators with paid employees. And even if they do, the reason that Reddit got so popular is that a previous service called, I believe it was Dig, went with some very unpopular choices. And pretty much everybody just migrated over.
Oh, Dig, that was 15 years ago or so. That 12 years ago they had it.
Kevin Rose.
Yeah.
Was that Kevin's?
Yeah, he started it, then he sold it.
Okay, I remember that part.
I think Ben makes a great point. All the passionate volunteers who work there, just for love of the content or whatever they're moderating. You alienate them. You can't afford to replace them, because the numbers are just too huge. I mean, it's sort of analogous, right? If you look at Wikipedia, it grew out of a large volunteer effort of people writing and moderating, and now it's a huge site, and they've gone by this sort of, we're a charity, give us money. If you use our service, give us money, and we'll keep on going. Whereas it seems Reddit, my own personal reaction when I look at a company that has gone through a Series F of VC funding, that basically tells me, they really don't have a clue of what they're going to do when they grow up to be a real revenue generating, profit generating company. But their VCs, and it would be interesting. I don't know what the makeup of their VCs and how many have stayed in, the different rounds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But clearly they've raised a lot of money under the promise that social media is big and this thing can be worth, many tens or $100 billion, and putting in another 10 or 20 or $100 million is table stakes to get the big return.
I just hope it's not one of those things where somebody tries to cash out and they kill the company in the process.
I would say that is a very real threat.
That's the way I see it, Ben, and I don't know. It seems like there's that's not capitalism. That's greed. If they're making investments and improving the platform and making more investments and continuing to improve the platform, but just to try to do this one big cash deal, and then walk away, I don't know. Doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel real good.
Eric,
sorry, go ahead.
To be perfectly honest, with all these major VC-funded companies, I feel like we've almost gone through a generation of business which has been allowed to be seriously deficient in actual business skills.
Which may be a strength and and is definitely a weakness in places, but maybe a strength too in places.
Yeah.
So, hey, Eric Bolden has joined us. He got the hamster back on the wheel and got the power up.
Mm-hmm.
Nice to be back. Like it when the power is working.
Yeah. Hey, you had said that you said in the chat room, and I'll ask you to elaborate a little bit. Reddit is still used quite a bit in useful technical search results. Is that because those particular forums haven't gone dark, Eric, or is it something else?
Well, I was more referring to useful before things went dark. When you did a Google search, a lot of the really useful results were posts out of Reddit, just presented through Google. So the going dark has had a big effect, which is why there's a whole lot of the communities that are looking for alternate places to park their information. It's going to take a while for this all to kind of resolve, I think.
Yeah. And Brian, I was a little bit curious about your comment too in the chat room. So about the data portion, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, my thought was, I wonder, we were discussing the 80 gigabytes of data, what data this may include. For myself, and I don't know how many others, I don't log in, but if there's an article or a thread that comes through and it's interesting and there's something to read from it, I do, but there's no logging in. There's no data necessarily for me, except, that type of thing.
It's been so long since I've been to Reddit, though. I mean, can you still navigate through Reddit without being logged in to any significant degree? Really? Okay.
Yeah, some direct links.
I guess there were some forums I was in quite a while back that whatever security or whatever, moderation they put in, they were taking it so that you had to be logged in, and it just turned me off, and so I just didn't anymore. So, okay, so we've talked about this little mini series we've got going here, spams and scams. This one's not mine, but it's an article from Lifehacker that said you should stop sending checks in the mail. That apparently there are people out there intercepting checks and going to some pretty extraordinary ends to try to cash these checks. And so this is more a public service thing. There's some good common sense things that, okay, if you have to do it, don't stick it in your mailbox with a little flag up for the postman to pick it up. Don't even use the public drop boxes, take it into the post office. So I don't know how much of this is really going on and where, but the way the world is going, it wouldn't surprise me a bit.
I mean, it's, you're sending out a piece of paper with the routing number and your account number for your bank account. They don't even have to cast a check in 2023 to pretty much have full access to your money.
Ben, we think alike. I was going to make the same point that almost anything, if you have those two numbers, you can start to initiate an ACH automated clearinghouse transfer. So you don't. I think the thing about, yes, maybe people washing checks and all the other stuff, I think that was in the old days. I think more high-tech solution now is people just do it electronically.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And yet, I'm sure we all have family members that insist on doing it this way, mailing utility bills in this way as opposed to the internet. Just feeling that, you read these stories about some website getting hacked or something, this, that, or the other. It's like, well, that could happen, sure. But they literally just have to open an envelope to be hacked.
Yeah.
What are you doing, Webb? You like a dealer.
I got 3 bills right here that are going out. Well, I was going to say by check tomorrow, but maybe I'll change that. So
check is in the voicemail.
Yeah.
Okay, Webb. Just for the fun of it, we'll pick on you a little bit. Why are you still using checks, or why would you be writing checks? Just
I prefer having the hard paper trail. And there's another issue that I've been dealing with here recently. It's because of the pandemic and post-pandemic. Mail service has really slowed, though, and I've been charged late fees from certain credit card companies that have very high late fee charges. And they've been hitting me with those, and I call them and ask them to take that back because I mailed the check on time. It was when they got around to opening the check or getting it submitted and then getting paid for it. So there's a real reason why I should change it. Let's just call it old school. I just don't do a lot of wire transfers or other ACH type transactions to pay utilities and things like that. So habit. I can't give you any other excuse than that.
On that note,
if it makes you feel any better, Webb, as soon as whatever company gets that check, they're doing they're basically.
I know exactly what they're doing. I do it in my business all the time. So.
Yeah. I'll say too, I'm not a huge fan too necessarily of having that direct access. When you do pay a bill, when a utility company does offer the opportunity, I tend to usually pay it with a credit card, and then I pay the credit card with a bank account, filtering it through that way. So it reduces some of the risk.
Yeah.
So Brian, that's interesting because some here, in San Jose, California, if you want to pay taxes, they'll take a check, they'll take ACH, or they'll zing you with like a 4.5%, credit card fee.
Yep.
And some utilities will take them, and others will zing you with the fee. So it's non-uniform in terms of their payment. You would think they would suck it up and realize, hey, it's a cost of doing business, but they're the government. They don't have to because they have no competition.
So true. Yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag here too.
See, I'm not sure who said it. I personally am not comfortable with giving any company, the ability to just pull money out of my account automatically. I want them to send me a bill or send me an invoice or send me an email, and then I will tell my bank to pay them.
You want to initiate the transaction, yeah.
Yes. I only in cases of emergency do I want to, and even if I grant them access, I take it back right away because that feels to me like the whole debit card thing of, if we have your debit card, so we can just empty your bank account, but if you have a credit card, at least you have an argument.
So I have a safety tip for that. And that is, both my wife and I, we have, different it's individual and joint checking accounts that we only keep a couple $100 in it until we need to pay something like property taxes. Then we move thousands of dollars in and pay the property tax. So that way it's a separate account, and if it were to be compromised for whatever reason, they only have access to nominally just a couple $100 instead of a lot more.
Yeah, that's a real good suggestion. Yeah. So again, folks, just be careful out there. That's all I know to say anymore, because it just seems like the scammers are getting better and better. I mean, I had no idea this this paper check thing was going on. I mean, not that I use paper checks, but that I know there are a lot of people that do.
Now that being said, Chuck, I have a related business entity that went through the whole check washing thing, and a $5,000, and it was actually to a charity. A $5,000 check got washed out to a $50,000 check. Now the bank caught it and didn't pay it, and that was a good thing. But yeah, I get your point. It's a dangerous world out there. Wear a helmet, you know.
Wear tinfoil.
I want that on a t-shirt.
Today's Mac Voices is supported by Notion. Do your most efficient work with Notion projects at notion.com/MacVoices. Project management tools are supposed to help you move faster and stay organized. The funny thing is, most are so complex that you try not to use them. When you do, you're usually flipping between 50 tabs or worse, several apps just to do your job. You clearly haven't found the right tool yet. That's why, today, I'm excited to share that Notion has just launched Notion Projects, which includes new, powerful ways to manage projects and leverage the power of their built-in AI features too. Notion Projects combines project management with your docs, knowledge base, and AI feature too, so you can stop jumping between tools and stop paying too much for them too. One workspace that includes everything you need, from brainstorming to drafting launch plans, to organizing sprints, and keeping everyone on deadline. And Notion can be customized to work the way you like to work, with timelines, tables, or Kanban boards. And did I mention integrated AI? Do your most efficient work with Notion projects. You can try it for free today at notion.com/MacVoices. That's all lowercase letters, notion.com/MacVoices. When you use my link, you're supporting my show. Go right now to notion.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Notion for supporting Mac Voices. I can't remember if we talked about this next story or not, but Western Digital, their MyCloud service had locked users out for a few days back in, I believe it was March. Yeah. And now it turns out that it was not just a technical thing, that it was a security breach. So if you are or were relying on Western Digital's MyCloud, you might want to go and, check and see that your data is secure and what options they're giving you for any protection. But, here we go again. Same thing. Be careful out there. It's a crazy world.
Yeah, that story is an oldie but goodie. I don't know if we talked about it, but I think it was on a story list way back when, in late March or early April.
Yeah, and we're right back to the whole discussion of cloud storage and cloud storing your files in the cloud. Mm-hmm. And I just, I'm a little surprised at Western Digital, but they're a storage company, but they're not necessarily a cloud company. And so that doesn't excuse anything, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't have trusted them then. You can make your own decisions about trusting them now.
Yeah,
but
MyCloud was more of a add-in than a real service.
Well, and what I wasn't clear, I couldn't remember, Ben, wasn't that, weren't there MyCloud devices that you were putting on your desk as opposed to having their servers?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that always feels a little bit strange to me. That, I like the idea of my data sitting here, but it might as well be sitting in a server and at least theoretically better protected there. Mm-hmm.
There was another service, and I think it could have been part of a subset of Drobo. It was called Transporter. It's kind of the same thing. And I remember I got interested in that with my wife and my mother-in-law and their photo files. And if you put it on the transporter here, it would mirror itself to the other transporter at my mother-in-law's house and vice versa. I don't want to go off on that tangent, but it's and where did that go? That went away too,
I know about that. Transporter bought Drobo back in 2013.
Okay.
And spun off Drobo, I think in 2015, if I remember the year correctly. And Transporter got acquired, and it got acquired by a not so enlightened company that just sort of
ignored it. Yeah,
was able just to run into the ground. But no, I do have transporter device. I used to have transporter devices, and they were really, really secure. The keys never left the device. They work on point-to-point security. I had a number of security freaks, receive them, and they do a port scan on them. There's only one port. There's no hidden ports or anything else. Like I've known other sort of transporter wannabes who built things on top of various Windows devices, and they find that no, the Windows service, desktop access port is open, and as all sorts of other things are. So anyway, just coming back in, the idea of yes, cloud devices and cloud security is tricky, and the challenge for a company like Western Digital, and there are other sort of devices out there. QNAP gets hacked a lot. Synology gets hacked from time to time. Some of the challenge is that they're not making money per se off their service. It's more of a checklist item, so they tend to implement it in the least costly manner possible, and they use a lot of open source technologies to do that. And that stuff is intrinsically unsafe because people know how to find it and identify it, and there's well-known hacks that they can look and probe for. So unless they're staying on top of all the fixes and releases, it's easy to get an installed base of devices that have security holes and liabilities just waiting to be exploited. And I think that was the thing. I think Chuck, I remember a year or 2 years ago, there was a conversation we had, and I know Kelly was on it, and she was quite animated about how she thought WD was acting in bad faith against its customers because of some of these security holes that that their my drive has had. But I think the nature is that open source software has a lot of strengths, but it also has a lot of weaknesses too, like bugs that may not get fixed in a timely fashion.
First of all, Kelly's pretty much animated about everything. But
I'm surprised she hasn't turned into a cartoon.
Yeah, we love you, Kelly. But yeah, and I'm with you, Mark. I get a little concerned that there's so many services out there that it seems to be that they just tack this on, like, oh yeah, and now this has this capability, and this has that capability, and you have to wonder about the security of those services. And I see, in my daily scanning of the news headlines and different websites, there's always some service that I've never heard of that we will give you 100 gigs of cloud storage free for life if you'll just sign up. And it's again, it's like, okay, so what data would I ever put out to one of these places? A, for storage, but B, what server am I putting it on? Am I putting it on? Is it in the Kremlin, or is it in Baghdad, or is it someplace that I really don't want my data to go, no matter how innocuous my data is?
Yeah, or is it my life, or your
define life
with a dubious business model? Is it your corporation's lifetime? Whose life are we talking about here?
Yes, yeah. I always say, if you're not paying for something, you're not the customer, and if you're not the customer, you're the product.
Ben, okay, you're taking me someplace I wasn't going to go tonight, but I've been thinking about this a lot because I heard somebody use the phrase the other day, Apple tax again. And it's, I think it's time we push back on the idea of it being an Apple tax and start looking at it as an Apple value. Because yes, Apple has to make money just like Google, just like Facebook, just like all the others. but Apple isn't selling us as users or
Yes.
our eyeballs or anything else. They are, yes, they will put ads in front of us, but they're not selling us. And so the only way they can make money is to charge us for their services and their hardware. And that's what they do, and we pay it. And we all have I think I speak for everybody here, we have a much better sense of peace that our data is as secure as it can be.
Mm-hmm.
Am I wrong about that?
You're right.
You're right.
Okay.
Yep. I also have a sense of peace in the craftsmanship, which good craftsmanship isn't cheap. I mean, look at Razer. They have equivalent build quality Apple. They have the same prices, if not higher.
Yes. And I think, some of the reason the Oculus devices are lower cost is, they're lower quality, they're just lower cost in a completely different category. It's like comparing an old Yugo against a Mercedes. They're not intrinsically the same devices, although the commonality that you put them on your head in front of your eyes, other than that, they're completely different.
So,
I'm now picturing wearing a Yugo.
So, Mark, you're going to make me skip over one other thing I definitely want to get to, but to go to this one, Meta will lower the Quest headset's recommended age from 13 to 10. So what change did they make technologically, content-wise, security-wise, oversight-wise, that all of a sudden, oh, yeah, it's okay to go from 13 to 10?
They didn't make a change. Apple did.
Sort of my point. David, you're laughing.
Yeah, I just the whole thing with the Apple tax. Yeah, it's just ludicrous. Why people even think that there is an Apple tax? I mean, it's either you like the product or you don't. If you don't like the product, you don't want to pay for it, then move on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we're all biased here because we all love Apple. We love the products. We use them all the time. There are people out there who are just adamantly against it. There's people who buy iPhones. Give a good example. They buy an iPhone. They'll want to hold on to an iPhone as long as they can. That's understandable. But there comes a time, if you're on an iPhone 7 or you're an iPhone 6, I mean, hey, it's time to upgrade. And do they want to pay the Apple tax? That's what they call it.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Well, no, they already David, they already paid it. They already bought an Apple device, and they've squeezed it out as many years as they could.
And by using it, if it's the iPhone 7, man, they've got a ton of years of that thing.
They did. If they
More than
they complain about, they did get a lot of years out of it, and there's the argument right there, especially with Macs. You got people with 8-9-year-old Macs that are still using them, and they're end of life on Mac OS, but it still works. If it still works for you, that's great. And I tell that anybody. I mean, all of us probably get the question. What computer should I buy? And when you tell them Mac, and they're like, "Oh boy, those are always really expensive." Well, think about the cost of ownership.
Yeah.
And how long it will be supported by the company.
Well, there's that too. Yeah, you buy a PC. I mean, I work with Dell and I work with Apple. I work with both in my job, and I have a good relationship with our Dell reps, and I see their products changing so often it's ridiculous, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, Apple stays consistent, and everybody is looking how great Macs are in the with the M1 now the M2, and everybody's saying great things about how incredibly fast the processors are. The batteries are fast. The battery's life is amazing. Okay, there's your balance right there. Is that an Apple tax? To me, that's you're saving a ton of money in the long run, honestly.
Yeah. Then on the cell phone side, you think about how long a Android device is getting operating system updates, and you may not have been choosing when those operating system updates happen.
Right.
And Yeah.
I mean, Apple's being very generous of sometimes 6, 7, I think sometimes 8 years on an iPhone before they finally end of life it. On Android, you're lucky you get 2, 3 years.
Yep. And I think the only reason a lot of those Android devices have gone to promising updates is because they're facing competition from Apple's used market.
There you go.
Yes.
The used market is that's a whole other story right there. The used market is huge.
And unless it's Pixel, you're getting all the bloatware and
oh yeah, I mean the
UI.
The carriers sell the Android devices. They're locked to the carrier. They don't want updates. And sometimes they don't get updates for a year after the Pixel or any Google phone or that get that update. I mean, so that's a whole other argument. But
yeah.
Well, sorry. Go ahead, Webb.
Oh, I was just going to say, but like all companies, and I agree with everything we've said. And I buy Apple products because I find them dependable. They do what I want to do. It's a great tool for my business. But Apple also evolves. We went from the 32-pin connector to the Lightning connector. Now we're getting ready to go through this transition again on USB-C on iPhones, which I predict will probably be at the next iPhone that comes out.
Oh, there's no question.
It's fine. They're all going to evolve. What was the thing I learned about at WWDC was that if you're on an iPhone 10, it's not going to be able to carry over to the iOS 17 or whatever the next version is.
Right.
So things evolve. Okay. The Apple tax. I was sitting here being quiet, and I'm going to spill the beans. I've mentioned here before, I think in After Dark, that at one point until this past December, I owned an Italian sports car, a very red Italian sports car. You want to talk about a tax? You look at the parts that you put on to one of those cars, you're paying a tax. And that's one of the reasons why I got rid of it. I was getting to the point that every time I had to replace something of significance, it was 5 figures easy. And so, it's just, you want to talk about paying an Apple tax, try the one with the stallion in front of it. So that's a tax. So, but you got the same thing with, and I'm a car guy. You got the same thing with Mercedes or with BMW. So
sure.
So I would take a guess that the ticker symbol for that company is RACE, R-A-C.
That's the one.
Okay. Yes.
Maybe owned by Stellantis.
Oh, that's Maserati.
There's a relationship there, but
I think that's Maserati.
Well, that's the same thing.
Yeah.
As this MacVoices Live panel concludes, we get into why Google is getting out of the domain name registration business and have a little fun at Spotify's expense about some of the activities and things that they're trying. That's next time on MacVoices. We hope you'll join us. As always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.